For centuries, the River Liffey has given of its fish to feed the hungry along its banks. But in the last century, fishing is now more for recreation than for food. And with a variety of angling clubs all fishing below the dams at Ballymore Eustace, and with lower water levels due to the control of those dams, this has meant that anglers along the river pay a lot of attention to the availability of fish on their part of the Liffey. And those in Clane in recent years have noticed something has changed.
We've been concerned about the collapse really in the trout numbers in the river for the last few years. It's been a gradual decline, I think, over the last maybe 10 or 12 years, but certainly in the last 5-6 years there's been a much more dramatic decrease, I think. And we have seen evidence of wastewater, sewage pollution in the river. We've seen a huge increase in the amount of weed in the river, which all serves to reduce the oxygen levels in the river. So what we think is that the oxygen sensitive species like trout and crayfish in particular, we're seeing much smaller numbers of those animals in the river at the minute. As anglers, we're on the river every day really from the 1st of March to the end of September, so we're seeing what's happening. We have a number of our members who are designated water keepers under the Fisheries Act, so we keep an eye on the river outside of the fishing season also. And we have reported issues to Kildare County Council, we've reported issues to Irish Water, but it's difficult to get people to act on those reports, and it's difficult to get, when you make a report, it's difficult to get feedback on what issues have been identified and whether any solutions are being found for those issues.
So a couple of years ago, the anglers in the Clane area, also in Athgarvan, Kilcullen, North Kildare, made representations to Inland Fisheries Ireland regarding the decline of brown trout stocks on the River Liffey, in the upper part of the River Liffey. So it was a couple of years ago. Between the pandemic and talking to our colleagues across the various sections, it takes quite a while to plan to do a survey. So this year we were able to try and do a survey to try and address some of the issues that the angling clubs have raised.
How much time is that?
4 minutes. It certainly is quite a while since the main channel here was surveyed. It was probably more than 20 years ago. So yes, it was. So it's certainly very opportune to survey the main channel in particular, as well as the tributaries. But our main focus was the main channel this year. So we had 2 boats from Ballymore Eustace all the way down to Athgarvan, Newbridge, Clane, and what we did was we assessed the fish stocks at 10-minute intervals at various points along those stretches. The locations that are identified are ones that were undertaken years ago, so that we can go back and assess and compare what we have found, so that it makes sense, if you like, to go forward.
It's 19.9.
We took lengths, weights, scales of all of the fish present, and that will help us to identify what the population of fish is. How does it compare to years since a previous survey was undertaken, what condition the fish were in, and also, very importantly, whether the populations are going up or down. So that will provide the basis on what decisions that we can make in the future regarding the management of the fishery. Yep. We did 2 weeks full work. A team of about 10 people were involved. The anglers provided great assistance in terms of organising access, parking with landowners along the river banks at various locations, and that was a tremendous success.
And I think the survey that IFI carried out on the river at least will provide hard scientific information about what the population of the river is, fish-wise and species-wise, and that hopefully with that information that will be able to be used to put some pressure on people to acknowledge what's happening and hopefully to do something about it.
The IFI survey results will not be officially released until 2022, but the indications certainly show that the Clane Anglers were right to be worried.
Our research team work in this area themselves as well. They certainly were very happy with fish stocks in the upper part of our catchment up around the Ballymore Eustace area. Certainly as we move downstream, down to this Clane section, trout stocks in particular were lesser in number from our observations in the survey.
What caused the decline in trout is still to be determined.
The River Liffey is our capital city's river. There's huge pressures on our River Liffey. Abstraction, pollution, there's all sorts of pressures. 1.5 million people living in and around the catchment, so massive pressures. But there's huge potential here. We found at least 8 fish species, okay? We have salmon and brown trout, which are protected, and we have a number of other fish species that were recorded as well.
But with all the pressures of other issues in Ireland today, how much do fish stocks on the Liffey matter to the average person?
I think everybody who uses it as an amenity cares about it. We certainly care about it as an angling club. There are people who kayak, there are people who walk along the lovely path here in Clane by the riverbank. I think people do care about it. We've got a wonderful amenity here. It's absolutely beautiful just to see the wildlife that's in and around the river, the plant life. Everything about it is just wholesome, and I think to lose that would be a disaster. And I think the more people we get on, we'll just try and get more people on board, and other river users get those on board. If there's an issue with the water quality, that's going to affect everybody. But really, I just don't know who's actually going to do anything. I don't know, because up to now it hasn't been happening.
We have formed a group consisting of all of the Upper Liffey clubs and ourselves. We're also talking to our colleagues in the EPA, the local authorities, people like LawPro, to try and address the overall issue. I would be hopeful of better water, of the different groups, the different stakeholders involved in our river and our water quality management working together to get a better outcome for everybody and to preserve our important fish species.
Always hopeful, yes. Fishermen are always optimistic. It goes with the territory.